The courtroom falls silent as Vanessa Johnson places the final evidence on the judge's bench. Behind her, 12 corrupt officers shift uncomfortably. The judge's eyes widen at the blood-stained badge. "This belonged to my daughter," Vanessa whispers, "before your department tried to erase her existence." Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice and a mother's relentless fight for her daughter, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you believe no one should be above the law, and subscribe to join our community fighting for justice. Now, let's go back to where this dark tale of corruption and a mother's unstoppable determination began. It started as an ordinary Tuesday at Lincoln Heights Academy in Westridge County, Maryland. 16-year-old Vanessa Johnson hurried through the crowded hallway, her backpack heavy with advanced placement textbooks. An honor student with dreams of becoming a civil rights attorney, Vanessa had organized a peaceful lunchtime demonstration that day against the school's discriminatory discipline policies. Data she'd meticulously gathered showed black students were 4 times more likely to be suspended than their white counterparts for identical infractions. The protest had gone well, 20 students silently holding signs with statistics and personal stories. Principal Karen Matthews had glared from her office window but couldn't find any rule they were breaking. As Vanessa turned the corner toward her chemistry class, she noticed school resource officers Marcus Tanner and Derek Collins surrounding Jamal Washington, a freshman who had participated in the protest. "Empty your pockets, boy," Officer Tanner barked, shoving Jamal against the lockers. "I know you've got something." Jamal's eyes widened in fear as he complied, his hands trembling. "I don't have anything, sir." Vanessa slowed her pace instinctively, reaching for her phone. The school had a clear policy: students were allowed to record interactions with staff as long as it didn't disrupt classes. She'd researched her rights carefully. "Hey, that's unnecessary," Vanessa called out calmly. "He wasn't doing anything wrong." Officer Collins spun toward her, his face instantly hardening. "Mind your business and keep walking." Instead, Vanessa stood her ground, holding her phone steady. "I'm just documenting this interaction. It's within my rights." Officer Tanner released Jamal with a shove and stalked towards Vanessa. "You're that troublemaker organizing protests." His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "Think you're smart, huh?" What happened next occurred with such sudden violence that witnesses later struggled to recount the sequence. Officer Tanner lunged forward, knocking the phone from Vanessa's hand. When she instinctively bent to retrieve it, he shouted, "She's reaching for my weapon." Though security footage would later prove this was impossible, Vanessa was nowhere near his holster. It became the justification for what followed. Officer Collins grabbed Vanessa from behind, slamming her face first into the metal lockers. Her glasses shattered, cutting into her cheek. Before she could regain her balance, Officer Tanner's baton struck her ribs with devastating force. "Stop resisting, oi!" he shouted, though Vanessa wasn't fighting back, merely trying to protect herself from the blows raining down. Students in the hallway screamed. Several began recording on their phones until Officer Collins shouted for them to disperse. "Police business. Anyone filming will have their phones confiscated as evidence." Despite the threat, sophomore Tyler Rodriguez managed to capture 47 seconds of footage showing Vanessa curled defensively on the floor as both officers continued their assault. The school's security officer, Reggie Davis, arrived and appeared hesitant, clearly shocked by the scene. "She going for your weapon?" he asked uncertainly. "Affirmative." Tanner responded without hesitation. "Tried to incite a riot, too." Davis radioed for medical assistance but was told to stand down by Collins. "We'll handle our own," Collins said firmly. The two officers dragged a now unconscious Vanessa through the hallway, her head bouncing against the tile floor with each step. Blood trailed behind them. Students were ordered to their classrooms as the school went into lockdown. Not because of any active threat, but to contain witnesses. By the time the ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, Zaria's condition had deteriorated critically. The paramedics found her handcuffed in the school's security office, unresponsive with dilated pupils. Her vital signs were crashing. "Jesus Christ," the lead paramedic muttered quickly, applying a cervical collar. "What happened to her?" Officer Tanner shrugged. "Resisting arrest, tried to grab my gun, then fell and hit her head." The paramedics' doubtful expression spoke volumes as they rushed to stabilize the teenager. At Westridge Memorial Hospital, doctors immediately recognized the severity of Zaria's injuries, severe head trauma with intracranial bleeding. 4 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, fractured orbital socket, and internal bleeding consistent with blunt force trauma. As the medical team worked frantically to save her life, Zaria's heart stopped twice on the operating table. By evening, the official police report painted a completely different picture. Female student ZJ became violent during standard questioning, attempted to disarm Officer Tanner, and sustained injuries while being restrained. Local news station WKRG repeated this narrative verbatim in their 6 o'clock broadcast. A 16-year-old student at Lincoln Heights Academy was hospitalized today after allegedly attacking a school resource officer. Meanwhile, the school's surveillance system experienced what the IT department would later call a technical malfunction during the exact 18-minute window of the incident. All footage was reportedly corrupted beyond recovery. By nightfall, Vanessa Johnson lay in a coma machines breathing for her, while the system that was supposed to protect her had already begun erasing her truth. Vanessa Johnson's hands trembled as she signed the endless stream of hospital admission forms. The fluorescent lights of the emergency waiting room cast harsh shadows across her face, highlighting the deep lines etched by years of struggle and resilience. At 44, Vanessa carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen the darkest corners of a broken system and survived to tell the tale. Few people at Westridge Memorial Hospital recognized the night janitor from the county courthouse as the once legendary internal affairs investigator who had nearly brought down the entire police department 8 years earlier. Even fewer knew the price she had paid for her integrity. Vanessa had joined the Westridge County Police Department 22 years earlier, a bright-eyed academy graduate with unshakable faith in justice and fairness. Her exceptional attention to detail and unwavering moral compass quickly distinguished her from her peers. 7 years into her career, she transferred to internal affairs, determined to uphold the standards of the department she believed in. "The badge means nothing if we don't hold ourselves to a higher standard," she often said. By her 3rd year in IA, Vanessa had begun noticing disturbing patterns in the complaints filed against certain officers. Use of force incidents against black residents were consistently dismissed without proper investigation. Evidence went missing. Witness statements were altered. Working nights at her kitchen table, Vanessa meticulously cross-referenced incidents, identifying statistical anomalies that couldn't be explained by coincidence. Her husband, Raymond Johnson, a respected detective in the robbery division, supported her investigation despite warnings from colleagues to let sleeping dogs lie. Together, they built an airtight case documenting systematic racial profiling and excessive force throughout the department. The evidence pointed to direct involvement from command staff, including then Captain William Blackwood. When Vanessa formally presented her findings to the Oversight Committee, she expected resistance. What she received was destruction. Within 48 hours, Internal Affairs was investigating her instead. Fabricated evidence suggested she had tampered with case files and intimidated witnesses. Her confidential informants suddenly changed their stories or became unreachable. District Attorney Howard Pierce personally announced a grand jury investigation into her abuse of power. The message was unmistakable. The system protected its own. 2 weeks into the smear campaign, Raymond Johnson died in what was officially ruled a tragic accident during a routine traffic stop. His patrol car was found at the bottom of a ravine off Highway 27 with brake lines that had mysteriously failed. The department arranged a hero's funeral while quietly shelving his ongoing investigations. Vanessa knew the truth, but grief and shock left her vulnerable. With her support system shattered and evidence against her mounting, she was given an ultimatum by Chief Blackwood, newly promoted after her investigation was buried: resign quietly or face criminal charges that would separate her from her 8-year-old daughter. For Zaria's sake, Vanessa accepted a settlement that required her silence and surrendered her badge. Blacklisted from law enforcement and private security work through unofficial but effective channels. Vanessa spent months unable to find employment. With savings dwindling and a daughter to support, she finally secured a position as a night janitor at the very courthouse where her career had been destroyed. The irony wasn't lost on her, scrubbing toilets in the building where justice had failed her family. But the position offered unexpected advantages. Working nights allowed her to be home when Zaria returned from school. The invisible status of maintenance staff meant people spoke freely around her, forgetting she existed. And most importantly, she gained after-hours access to areas normally restricted to the public. Over the years, Vanessa had built a quiet life centered around raising Zaria right. She taught her daughter to document everything to know her rights and to stand up for justice, but also to fly under the radar of a system they knew was fundamentally corrupted. Keep your head high, but your profile low became their mantra. Behind the scenes, Vanessa maintained a network of contacts who respected her integrity. Letitia Washington, the courthouse clerk who had seen too many cases fixed. James Rodriguez, a retired detective who had once partnered with Raymond. Andre Wilson, a former tech specialist, pushed out for questioning evidence handling practices. Each represented a thread in a silent web of resistance, waiting for the right moment to act. On Zaria's 10th birthday, Vanessa had taken her daughter to the memorial bench dedicated to Raymond. "Your father died because he wouldn't look away from wrongdoing," she explained, her voice steady despite the pain. "Never stop seeking truth, but be smarter than we were. Document everything. Build your case silently. And when you strike, make it count." Now sitting in a hospital waiting room while surgeons fought to save her daughter's life, Vanessa Johnson finally understood. The moment she had been preparing for all these years had arrived. The department that had taken her husband and career had now come for her child. This time, she wouldn't confront the corruption head-on. This time, she would become the ghost in their machine, the invisible force that would methodically dismantle their power from within. As the surgeon approached with grave news about Zaria's condition, Vanessa's grief crystallized into cold, calculated purpose. The department had no idea who they were truly dealing with: a mother with nothing left to lose, armed with 8 years of collected intelligence and a janitor's keys to the kingdom. Zaria's hospital room resembled a fortress more than a place of healing. Machines beeped rhythmically, tracking vital signs that offered little reassurance. Tubes and wires connected to a body so battered and swollen it was barely recognizable as the vibrant teenager who had left for school that morning. 2 uniformed officers stood outside, supposedly for protection, but monitoring every visitor with suspicious scrutiny. Who were they really guarding, Zaria or their department's secrets? If you believe this level of police presence for an unconscious teenager is about protection rather than control. Comment number 1. If you think it shows a department already covering its tracks, hit that like button. And while we're watching this injustice unfold, subscribe so you never miss an update on stories that matter. Now, what lengths would these officers go to in protecting their own? Dr. Gabriel Martinez entered the room, clipboard in hand, expression grave, as he reviewed Zaria's latest scans. Vanessa rose from her chair beside the bed, her eyes never leaving her daughter's battered face. "Just tell me straight, doctor. Will she wake up?" Dr. Martinez glanced toward the partially open door, then deliberately closed it before speaking in a lowered voice. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to speak candidly. These injuries," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "are inconsistent with the report filed by the officers. The pattern and severity suggest repeated blunt force trauma from multiple angles, not a fall during restraint." He showed her the scan results pointing to specific areas. "This level of trauma requires substantial deliberate force." Vanessa's throat tightened. "Are you documenting this in her official records?" The doctor's hesitation told her everything. "I've noted the injuries accurately, but administration has requested all reports go through legal review before filing. It's unusual protocol." Before he could continue, the door swung open. Chief William Blackwood entered, his imposing figure filling the doorway. At 62, Blackwood had the polished appearance of a man comfortable with power, silver hair, perfectly groomed uniform, crisp command presence, automatic. Dr. Martinez stiffened. "Chief Blackwood, this is a restricted patient area." Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Hospital Administrator Morris granted special access. This case has departmental significance." He turned to Vanessa, expression shifting to practiced sympathy. "Mrs. Johnson, such a terrible accident. The entire department is devastated." The word accident hung in the air like poison. Vanessa maintained her composure, years of interrogation training controlling her expression. "Chief Blackwood, I wasn't aware the head of police personally visited all injured students." His eyes narrowed slightly at her tone. "Your daughter's situation is unique. I wanted to personally assure you we're investigating thoroughly." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I understand you've had disagreements with the department in the past, but I hope we can handle this situation professionally for everyone's benefit." The threat beneath his sympathetic facade was unmistakable. Officers Tanner and Collins have exemplary records. Young people today often don't understand the challenges officers face. As he spoke, Vanessa noticed a text message on his partially visible phone screen. "Damage control in progress. Media narrative established." He quickly pocketed the device. "If there's anything the department can do to assist during this difficult time, please don't hesitate to ask." Vanessa nodded, playing her role. "Thank you for your concern, Chief." After Blackwood departed, Vanessa searched Zaria's belongings. Her phone was conspicuously absent. Within hours, the department's rapid response was evident. Local news reported, "Student with history of disciplinary problems attacks school officer." Vanessa knew Zaria had no such history. Her daughter's record was impeccable, yet suddenly, anonymous sources claimed Zaria had previous confrontations with school authorities. That evening, Officer Tanner appeared on Channel 5 News, his arm in a sling that hadn't been present at the scene. "I never wanted to use force," he stated, eyes appropriately downcast for the camera. "But when she went for my weapon training, took over." The department spokesperson announced that Officer Tanner's body camera had unfortunately malfunctioned during the incident. A technical error during data upload had corrupted the footage beyond recovery. By morning, Vanessa discovered students who had witnessed the assault were receiving intimidating home visits from detectives. Parents called her concerned about officers questioning their children without legal representation, making veiled threats about obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact, if their accounts contradicted the official narrative. Principal Matthews issued a formal statement supporting the officers' actions and announcing enhanced security measures to ensure student safety. The subtext was clear: protest would not be tolerated. At the hospital, Vanessa overheard two nurses discussing pressure they'd received to modify their initial treatment reports. "They're saying we need to indicate the injuries could be consistent with a fall," one whispered. "The hospital attorney says we could be liable if we make unfounded accusations against officers." When District Attorney Howard Pierce himself arrived to speak with hospital administration, Vanessa knew the cover-up had reached the highest levels. Through the service corridor she routinely cleaned, she overheard Pierce instructing the hospital director, "This needs to be handled delicately. The grand jury will review this case next week. Expedited schedule. We need all documentation aligned with officer statements by then." Later that night, Vanessa slipped into the records room during her cleaning shift, using her access card to review Zariah's initial admission documents. The original paramedic report noted, "Injuries inconsistent with explained cause. Patient shows signs of multiple impact trauma." In the updated file, this had been replaced with "Injuries sustained during law enforcement restraint procedure after patient resistance." The timestamps revealed the change had occurred after Chief Blackwood's visit. As Vanessa quietly moved through the courthouse during her shift that night, emptying trash cans and wiping surfaces, her invisible status allowed her to observe a hurried meeting between D.A. Pierce and Judge Gregory Sullivan. Their voices carried through the partially open door. "This Johnson situation needs to disappear quickly," Pierce urged. The officers followed protocol against an aggressive suspect. Sullivan nodded. "I'll ensure any warrants or subpoenas go through my chamber. We don't need outside eyes on this." Vanessa realized then her position as courthouse janitor wasn't a demotion. It was perfect cover for what she needed to do. She had access to offices, meeting rooms, and documents that even officers couldn't reach without warrants. She could move invisibly through the very heart of the system that was now trying to bury her daughter's case. That night, as she mopped the floor outside the district attorney's office, Vanessa Johnson made a decision. The system had taught her that frontal attacks failed against entrenched power. This time, she would become the ghost in their machine, gathering evidence piece by piece until she had enough to bring down not just two violent officers, but the entire corrupt apparatus that protected them. Vanessa Johnson's mop moved rhythmically across the courthouse floor, her uniform and routine rendering her practically invisible to the attorneys and officials hurrying past. The perfect disguise was no disguise at all, just a black woman in a maintenance uniform beneath notice in the halls of power. Behind her downcast eyes, however, Vanessa's mind worked with tactical precision, mapping out her investigation like the seasoned detective she once was. Her first move came at 4:17 in the morning when the courthouse stood empty except for security guards who had grown accustomed to her presence. She slipped into the clerk's office where her old friend Letitia Washington had accidentally left her computer logged in before departing for the night. With practiced efficiency, Vanessa accessed the sealed records system, searching for previous complaints against officers Marcus Tanner and Derek Collins. The results confirmed her suspicions: 17 excessive force complaints against Tanner, over 8 years, 11 against Collins. All had been dismissed for insufficient evidence or settled with non-disclosure agreements. Most disturbing was the pattern. 14 of Tanner's complaints came from Black or Latino subjects. The settlements, totaling over $2 million of taxpayer money, had been authorized by Chief Blackwood and processed through Judge Sullivan's court with minimal documentation. Vanessa photographed each screen with a miniature camera disguised as a pen, old-school technology that couldn't be hacked or remotely accessed. The next night, she placed carefully modified listening devices in strategic locations, one beneath the conference table in the DA's private meeting room, another disguised as a light fixture in Chief Blackwood's office at the courthouse. These weren't sophisticated enough to be detected by standard sweeps, but would capture any conversations within range. 3 days later, her patience was rewarded. "The Johnson girls' classmates are becoming a problem." Chief Blackwood's voice came through clearly on the recording. "That Rodriguez kid still has video he hasn't turned over." District Attorney Pierce's response was chilling. "Send Collins to have another conversation with the family. Remind them about the father's immigration status. That should secure their cooperation." Blackwood chuckled. "Already handled, and I've had Matthews pull Johnson's school records. We're adding some disciplinary notes retroactively, nothing major, just enough to establish a pattern of authority issues. Good. Judge Sullivan will make sure any warrant for those records goes through his chamber. We need this wrapped up before state oversight starts asking questions. With this evidence of conspiracy and witness intimidation in hand, Vanessa contacted James Rodriguez, the retired detective who had been her husband's partner. They met at a diner 30 miles outside Westridge County, where Vanessa laid out what she had discovered so far. "Jesus, Vanessa," Rodriguez whispered, reviewing the photos of records. "This goes beyond two rogue cops. This is systematic." Rodriguez agreed to help access deleted surveillance footage from the school. His former position gave him connections to the IT department, where a sympathetic technician recovered fragments of the supposedly corrupted video. Though incomplete, it clearly showed Officer Tanner striking Zaria while she was already on the ground, directly contradicting his claim of self-defense. Vanessa's network expanded strategically. Andre Wilson, a former tech specialist who had been forced out of the department after questioning evidence handling procedures, helped her recover deleted data from the courthouse servers. The recovered files revealed a pattern cases involving excessive force by certain officers, including Tanner and Collins, were flagged with a special code that routed them to specific prosecutors and judges. "They've created a parallel justice system," Wilson explained, showing her the data pathways. "These cases never go through standard channels." The most disturbing discovery came when Vanessa found references to a group called the Cleaners in text messages between Tanner Collins and 4 other officers. Their communication suggested an unofficial unit within the department tasked with maintaining order in predominantly minority neighborhoods and schools. Chief Blackwood's name appeared in messages authorizing their activities while maintaining official deniability. Following financial trails, Vanessa uncovered connections between the county's aggressive school policing and the privately owned Westridge Juvenile Detention Center. County records showed payments to the school district based on security program effectiveness, with metrics directly tied to student arrest rates. The detention center, she discovered, was owned by Blackwood Enterprises, LLC, primarily controlled by Chief Blackwood's brother, Senator Thomas Blackwood. Most disturbing was the discovery that Lincoln Heights Academy and 3 other predominantly black schools had arrest rates 6 times higher than schools in white neighborhoods, despite similar infraction types. The financial benefit to this arrangement was clear. Each incarcerated juvenile represented approximately $78,000 in annual revenue to the detention center, which received state funding per occupied bed. As Vanessa built her case methodically, an unexpected ally emerged. Officer Maya Patel, a 26-year-old recent academy graduate, approached Vanessa one evening as she cleaned the women's locker room at the station. "Mrs. Johnson," she whispered, checking to ensure they were alone. "I saw what happened after they brought your daughter in. The photos they deleted, the reports they altered. What they did wasn't right." Initially suspicious of a trap, Vanessa was cautious, but Officer Patel proved her sincerity by providing copies of the original incident photos showing Zaria's injuries before selective images were submitted as evidence. "They're planning to charge her once she's stable," Patel warned. "They're building a case claiming she was involved in drug distribution at school. It's completely fabricated." This information allowed Vanessa to search specifically for evidence of planted contraband. Sure enough, court records showed an application for a search warrant of Zaria's locker, scheduled for execution the following day. Throughout her investigation, Vanessa maintained meticulous documentation. Each piece of evidence was photographed, recorded, and secured in multiple locations. She created a detailed timeline establishing the conspiracy, identifying every participant from patrol officers to the district attorney. She mapped connections between officials, financial beneficiaries, and previous victims. Most importantly, she built redundancy into her evidence storage. If one cache was discovered, others would remain secure. USB drives were hidden in locations throughout the county. Cloud storage was established under aliases. Physical documents were sealed in waterproof containers buried in locations only she knew. As the evidence mounted, Vanessa realized the conspiracy extended far beyond her daughter's case. The same pattern of excessive force, altered evidence, witness intimidation, and judicial complicity appeared in dozens of cases spanning 20 years. Young black men and women had been systematically targeted, their futures destroyed, to feed a profitable pipeline from school to prison. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a machine of oppression built on racism and greed, operating in plain sight, but protected by badges and gavels. And at the center of it all stood Chief William Blackwood, the same man who had destroyed her career and quite possibly ordered her husband's death. Vanessa worked silently, invisibly, the maintenance uniform her perfect camouflage, as she moved through the halls of power unnoticed, building the case that would dismantle a corrupt empire and finally bring justice to her family and countless others who had been crushed beneath its weight. The soft, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor had become the soundtrack to Vanessa's life. For 23 days she had split her time between the hospital chair beside Zaria's bed and her night shifts at the courthouse, catching moments of sleep whenever she could. The doctors spoke in carefully measured terms. Some brain activity improvements, responding to stimuli, cautiously optimistic. Vanessa clung to each clinical scrap of hope while continuing her methodical investigation. On the 24th day, everything changed. Vanessa had been whispering to Zaria about her day, a ritual she maintained despite no response when she noticed a flutter of movement beneath her daughter's eyelids. "Zaria." She leaned closer, heart pounding. "Baby, can you hear me?" The fingers in her hand twitched, then squeezed weakly. Tears blurred Vanessa's vision as Zaria's eyes slowly opened, unfocused at first, then gradually finding her mother's face. The medical team rushed in, conducting rapid assessments. "Remarkable improvement," Dr. Martinez murmured, checking pupillary responses. "She's fighting her way back." Within hours, news of Zaria's improving condition reached the department. Vanessa was reviewing her daughter's latest brain scans with Dr. Martinez when Officer Collins appeared at the door accompanied by a woman in a business suit. "Mrs. Johnson," Collins nodded stiffly. "This is Assistant District Attorney Melanie Foster. She's here to inform you that charges are being filed against Zaria for assaulting a police officer, resisting arrest, and possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute." Vanessa's expression remained neutral despite the rage building inside her. "My daughter has been in a coma for over 3 weeks. She's just regained consciousness and can barely move. And you're charging her ADA." Foster's smile didn't reach her eyes. The charges were delayed due to her medical condition. Now that she's improving, the case will proceed. Once she's medically stable, she'll be transferred to juvenile detention pending trial. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, professional composure barely containing his indignation. "My patient has severe traumatic brain injury. She requires intensive rehabilitation and constant medical monitoring. Transfer to a detention facility would constitute serious medical negligence." Foster's expression hardened. "The juvenile facility has medical staff. We'll coordinate with them for appropriate care." After they left, Dr. Martinez turned to Vanessa, voice low. "They're trying to get her out of my care. Once she's in their system." He didn't need to finish. Vanessa knew exactly what happened to evidence and witnesses once they were under department control. Later that afternoon, as Vanessa helped physical therapists with Zaria's first minimal movement exercises, her phone buzzed with a text from Officer Patel. "Urgent, warrant approved to search Z's room and possessions. Planting evidence likely. ETA 2 hours. Vanessa immediately contacted James Rodriguez, who arrived at the hospital within 30 minutes. Together, they thoroughly documented every item in Zaria's hospital room with time-stamped video. When officers arrived with the search warrant, Rodriguez introduced himself as family friend and former law enforcement observer, making it clear the search was being monitored. Their frustrated expressions confirmed Patel's warning. The officers left without finding anything. That evening, protesters gathered outside the hospital after partial video of Zaria's assault leaked online. The grainy footage captured by student Tyler Rodriguez before his phone was confiscated showed just 18 seconds of the attack, but clearly depicted Officer Tanner striking Zaria with his baton while she was already on the ground. Social media erupted with the hashtag Justice for Zaria as the video went viral despite efforts to suppress it. The department's response was swift and multifaceted. Chief Blackwood held a press conference claiming the video was taken out of context and failed to show the violent resistance that preceded necessary force. Local news channels owned by Westridge Media Group, a company with financial ties to Senator Blackwood, ran segments questioning the video's authenticity and featuring interviews with experts who supported the officer's actions. Meanwhile, Vanessa returned home from the hospital to find her apartment door slightly ajar. Inside furniture had been overturned, drawers emptied, and walls damaged. Though disguised as a burglary, nothing of value had been taken. But the locations where she had hidden evidence had been thoroughly searched. Fortunately, her most crucial documentation was secured elsewhere, in multiple locations, following the contingency plans she had developed years before. Anonymous threats began appearing, a note under her windshield wiper: "Accidents happen to nosy bitches." Late-night calls with nothing but breathing on the line, unmarked police cruisers parked outside her building. The message was clear: back off or face consequences. At the hospital, Zaria's condition continued to improve incrementally. On the 28th day, she managed to whisper a few words to her mother during a moment when they were alone. "Mom," her voice barely audible. "They were waiting for me." Vanessa leaned closer. "What do you mean, baby?" Zaria's effort to speak was visible, each word a struggle. "Teachers, told to write up specific students. List from principal, targeted protesters." Her eyes closed with exhaustion, but she had provided a crucial piece of the puzzle. The targeting hadn't been random. It was systematic. This matched what Vanessa had discovered in Principal Matthews's emails accessed through Andre Wilson's technical skills directives from the district to identify problem students with disruptive ideologies. The list included leaders of student equality organizations, children who questioned authority, and those who knew their rights, particularly from minority backgrounds. The next day, Vanessa found documents confirming that Westridge Juvenile Detention Center, owned by Blackwood Enterprises, received county funding based on occupancy rates. Each incarcerated student represented significant revenue. More disturbing was the connection to Chief Blackwood's brother, whose lobbying had secured state contracts guaranteeing minimum occupancy rates, creating a financial incentive to arrest and detain more young people. The school-to-prison pipeline wasn't just institutional racism, it was a profitable business model. As Vanessa continued gathering evidence, Officer Collins confronted her in the hospital parking garage. "You're poking around in things that don't concern you, Vanessa," he said, blocking her path to her car. "For someone who lost everything once already, you don't seem to learn." Vanessa maintained her composure. "I'm just taking care of my daughter, Officer Collins." His laugh was cold. "Sure you are, just like your husband was just doing routine traffic stops before his brakes failed." The reference to Raymond's death confirmed what she had long suspected about her husband's accident. "Tragic things happen to people who don't mind their business," Collins continued. "Would be a shame if your daughter had complications. Hospitals can be dangerous places. Medications get mixed up." Vanessa's phone recording in her pocket captured every word of the threat. She escaped detection while accessing restricted files by leaning into stereotypes about black maintenance workers, keeping her head down, appearing subservient when officials passed playing into their assumptions about her intelligence and capabilities. "Just cleaning up, sir," she would murmur when questioned about her presence in sensitive areas, knowing her uniform rendered her essentially invisible to those in power. Through Officer Patel, Vanessa learned the department was preparing to transfer Zaria to juvenile detention as soon as she could be moved, where she would be isolated from outside contact for her protection. The accelerated timeline meant Vanessa needed to act faster than planned. Each day brought escalating pressure and danger, but also new evidence strengthening her case. The corrupted system that had once destroyed her career and taken her husband was now targeting her daughter. But this time, Vanessa Johnson wasn't fighting as a police officer bound by departmental rules and chain of command. She was fighting as a mother armed with years of collected intelligence and the skills of a once legendary investigator. And she was ready to bring the entire corrupt system crashing down. Vanessa noticed the unmarked police cruiser following her immediately. After 20 years in law enforcement, surveillance tactics were impossible to miss. The same vehicle maintaining consistent distance, the predictable patterns of acceleration and braking. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. Was this intimidation, or had they realized she was building a case? What would you do if you discovered powerful people were watching your every move? Comment number 1 if you'd confront them directly, or hit that like button if you'd use their overconfidence against them like Vanessa is about to do. And subscribe right now, because this story of corruption and a mother's fight for justice is about to reach another level. How far would these officers go to protect their system? Vanessa had anticipated escalation, but the department's response exceeded even her expectations. Her apartment's locks had been professionally picked twice more, leaving almost imperceptible marks only her trained eye would notice. Her car's brake lines showed signs of tampering during her routine safety check, a chilling echo of how Raymond had died. The hospital reported system glitches that temporarily disabled cameras near Zaria's room during unauthorized visitor attempts. Each move confirmed the department's desperation and reinforced the importance of her countermeasures. The confrontation with Officer Collins in the parking garage had been just the beginning. 2 days later, as Vanessa was leaving the hospital after her visiting hours, Officer Tanner stepped from behind a concrete pillar, his imposing figure blocking her path. "You know what happens to rats, Johnson." His voice was conversational, almost friendly, making the threat more menacing. "They get exterminated. You keep digging into department business, people might start wondering if your daughter's the only one who should be in a hospital bed." Vanessa maintained her cover eyes, downcast, voice subdued. The janitor who knew her place. "I'm just trying to take care of my girl, officer." His laugh was cold. "Sure you are. I know you've been talking to Rodriguez and Wilson. Bad choice of friends." The mention of her collaborators confirmed they were being watched too. Vanessa needed to warn them, but also recognized an opportunity in the department's increasing aggression. They were making mistakes, creating evidence of intimidation and conspiracy. The threats escalated to action when Child Protective Services arrived at the hospital the following day. The caseworker, clearly uncomfortable, explained that anonymous allegations had been filed, questioning Vanessa's fitness as a mother. "The report claims you've been neglecting Zaria's basic needs for years, contributing to her troubled behavior and mental instability." Vanessa recognized the tactic immediately: discredit the victim and isolate her from supporters. Fortunately, Dr. Martinez intervened, providing medical documentation of Vanessa's exemplary care and regular presence at the hospital. The CPS case was temporarily suspended, but remained open, another pressure point the department could leverage. Recognizing that time was running short, Vanessa implemented the next phase of her strategy. She contacted Sophia Chen, an investigative journalist at the Westridge Examiner, known for her integrity and persistence. They met at a coffee shop 2 counties away where Vanessa strategically provided partial evidence, enough to establish credibility without revealing her full case. "This goes beyond 2 violent cops," Vanessa explained quietly. "It's a systemic pipeline funneling black and brown kids from schools to private detention centers for profit." Chen reviewed the documents with widening eyes. "This is explosive, Mrs. Johnson, but publishing this will make you a target." Vanessa's smile was grim. "I'm already a target. But they don't know how much evidence I have or where it's stored." 3 days later, Chen published the first article in a series, Questions Surround Police Handling of Lincoln Heights Academy Incident. The piece carefully avoided direct accusations, but raised enough concerns about inconsistencies in the official narrative to create public pressure. The response was immediate and revealing. Chen's editor received phone calls from Chief Blackwood and District Attorney Pierce demanding a retraction. When that failed, advertising from county-affiliated businesses was pulled from the paper. Chen herself reported being followed by unmarked vehicles. The department's overreaction confirmed they had much to hide. That night, Vanessa returned to her apartment to find smoke billowing from beneath her door. The fire had been strategically set to destroy her living room, exactly where she had left decoy evidence files in a hidden compartment designed to be discovered. Firefighters contained the blaze before it spread to other units, but Vanessa's possessions were largely destroyed. The fire investigator initially called it electrical, until Vanessa privately showed him evidence of accelerant by the door. "This was arson," he admitted quietly. "But my report will say cause undetermined unless you want your daughter to have another accident." The intimidation had reached the fire department. What the department didn't know was that Vanessa's actual evidence was secured in multiple locations with dead man switches. If anything happened to her, trusted contacts would automatically receive instructions to forward everything to federal authorities, state oversight committees, and media outlets nationwide. The morning after the fire, Vanessa was called to a meeting with Chief Blackwood and District Attorney Pierce. Officer Patel had warned her it was coming, allowing her to wear a concealed recording device. In the sterile conference room at the courthouse, their offer was straightforward, a settlement requiring her silence. $300,000 compensation for Zaria's unfortunate injuries, Pierce explained smoothly, contingent upon a statement acknowledging her role in initiating the confrontation and agreement not to pursue civil or criminal complaints. Chief Blackwood leaned forward, voice softening with practiced concern. "Vanessa, we all want what's best for Zaria. This generous settlement will cover her medical expenses and secure her future. The alternative," he let the implication hang in the air. Vanessa played her role, appearing conflicted and frightened. "And the charges against her?" Pierce smiled thinly. "She would plead to reduce charges, simple assault and possession. Probation only, no detention time given her medical condition." The recording captured every word of their attempt to coerce a false confession from an injured minor in exchange for dropping manufactured charges. At the hospital, Vanessa discovered another front in their war against her. The hospital administrator informed her that Zaria's insurance had raised questions about the necessity of continued intensive care. They're suggesting transfer to a lower-cost facility, citing policy limitations for injuries sustained during criminal activity. The administrator seemed genuinely apologetic. "We're appealing, but you should know the decision came after calls from the county commissioner's office." The system was attacking from every angle: her home, her daughter's medical care, her legal options, her financial stability. Through relentless investigation, Vanessa discovered a pattern extending back decades. 17-year-old Marcus Davis beaten into a permanent vegetative state in 2005 after questioning an officer's search. 15-year-old Tatiana Morris found hanging in a detention cell in 1998 after reporting sexual assault by a guard. 14-year-old Devin Williams shot in the back while fleeing in 2011 despite witnesses stating he was complying with orders. Each case had been handled by the same rotating cast of officers, prosecutors, judges, and medical examiners. Families had been silenced through combinations of threats, manufactured criminal charges, deportation of relatives, or financial settlements with non-disclosure agreements. Most disturbing was the connection Vanessa finally established between these cases and Raymond's death. Her husband's last case notes, which she had preserved after his EO accident, contained references to a juvenile detention transport driver who had witnessed officers beating a handcuffed teenager. The witness had agreed to testify, but the day before his scheduled grand jury appearance, Raymond's brake lines had failed on his drive home. The witness subsequently recanted, claiming memory problems from a recent head injury. As Vanessa connected these dots, she narrowly escaped an attempted abduction outside the courthouse after her night shift. Two men in masks had approached her in the deserted parking garage, but Officer Patel's timely arrival, supposedly for an early morning shift, had caused them to retreat. "They're getting desperate," Patel warned. "Someone accessed your personnel file yesterday looking for vulnerabilities. They know you're building something they can't control." Vanessa realized time was running out. The department's escalating tactics suggested they feared what she had discovered. Each attack confirmed she was on the right track, but also increased the danger to herself, Zaria, and her allies. The invisible janitor, who had moved unnoticed through their halls of power, had become their most feared adversary. Now she needed to transform her meticulously gathered evidence into an unstoppable force that would bring down not just two violent officers, but the entire corrupt system they represented. The small church basement in Riverdale, a town 15 miles from West Ridge County, was an unlikely war room. Folding tables held stacks of documents, laptops displayed data analysis, and the walls were covered with timeline charts connecting people, events, and evidence. Vanessa stood before 24 people, each representing a piece of the alliance she had carefully assembled. "Thank you all for coming," she began, surveying the diverse group. "Everyone in this room has suffered under or witnessed the corruption in West Ridge County's justice system. Today, we build the case that will end it." The families came first, parents, siblings, and children of those who had been victims of the same officers and system now targeting Zaria. Maria Gonzalez, whose son had been planted with drugs after organizing immigrant rights education. James Davis, whose brother remained in a care facility after a restraint incident remarkably similar to Zaria's. Kiana Williams, whose teenage son had been shot during a traffic stop, the dashboard camera mysteriously malfunctioning. Each family had been isolated, intimidated, and silenced until now. "They count on our silence," Vanessa told them. "They count on each victim feeling alone. Together we create a pattern they cannot explain away." Benjamin Marshall, a civil rights attorney who had fought the department for 20 years, initially seemed skeptical. At 58, the distinguished lawyer had seen too many promising cases collapse under the weight of systemic protection. "I've filed 37 complaints against West Ridge County officers," he explained, 17 specifically naming Tanner or Collins. "Each time evidence disappears, witnesses recant or judges dismiss before discovery." Vanessa nodded. "That's why we're not just building a case. We're building multiple cases through multiple channels simultaneously with evidence secured beyond their reach." She presented the results of her investigation, not just the assault on Zaria, but the network of corruption extending through the department court, school administration, and private detention facilities. Marshall's skepticism gave way to cautious optimism as he reviewed the evidence. "This is comprehensive. If even half of this holds up—" "It will hold," Vanessa assured him. "Every document is authenticated, every recording verified, every financial connection confirmed through multiple sources." The alliance grew strategically. Rebecca Winters, a 47-year-old state investigator who had been blocked from investigating West Ridge County for years, provided access to state-level records that revealed patterns invisible at the local level. "They've been diverting federal law enforcement grants to you," she explained, displaying financial documents. Funds earmarked for community policing and training were channeled to equipment and the specialized unit unofficially known as the Cleaners. Chief Blackwood's signature authorized each diversion while accounting tricks disguised the paper trail. The financial investigation uncovered the profit mechanism driving the corruption. Andre Wilson, using his technical expertise, traced money flowing from state incarceration contracts to Blackwood Enterprises, then through shell companies to accounts benefiting Chief Blackwood D.A. Pierce and Judge Sullivan. They receive approximately $4,000 per student funneled into the detention system, Wilson explained. The school-to-prison pipeline isn't just institutional racism, it's a business model. School board financial records revealed members receiving consulting fees from entities connected to Blackwood Enterprises after implementing zero-tolerance disciplinary policies targeting specific demographics. Principal Matthews' emails contained explicit directives to staff about identifying problem students with subversive attitudes, primarily those who questioned authority or knew their rights. Officer Maya Patel's role became increasingly crucial. The young officer agreed to wear concealed recording devices during department meetings, capturing explicit racist comments and discussions of evidence tampering. "They don't censor themselves around me," she explained. "As the only woman of color in the department, they either forget I'm there or assume I'm grateful enough for the job to stay quiet." Her recordings included a briefing where Chief Blackwood instructed officers on handling the Vanessa Johnson case. "This family has caused trouble before. We need this contained before it impacts department operations or our community partnerships." The coded language thinly disguised the true concern, protecting the profitable pipeline from exposure. Marshall worked with Vanessa to organize the evidence for submission to multiple agencies, simultaneously: the FBI, Civil Rights Division, State Attorney General's Office, Department of Justice, and State Police Oversight Board. "We need to prevent them from burying this through their usual channels," Marshall explained. "Simultaneous filings create multiple entry points they can't all control." Each evidence package was structured as a RICO case, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, allowing prosecutors to connect seemingly disparate acts into a pattern of organized criminal activity. "The strength is in the pattern," Marshall emphasized, "not just Zaria's case, but dozens linked by the same perpetrators' methods and financial beneficiaries." As the Alliance refined their strategy, Vanessa maintained her hospital vigil. Zaria's condition had improved enough for limited communication, though her recovery journey would be long. During a rare moment of clarity, Zaria provided the final crucial piece of evidence. "My phone," she whispered, voice still weak. "Backup? Cloud account? Recorded everything." Vanessa had assumed Zaria's phone was destroyed or wiped by the officers. Instead, her tech-savvy daughter had configured automatic cloud backup that continued transmitting even after the physical device was confiscated. The password Zaria provided led to a virtual treasure trove audio recording of the entire incident, including Officer Tanner's initial provocation and explicit racial comments before the assault began. "I've been waiting for one of you troublemakers to give me a reason," his voice came clearly through the recording. "Think you're smart with your protests and your rights? I'll show you what rights you have." The recording captured every blow, every threat, and critically, Colin's voice stating, "Chief said to make an example of the next one who steps out of line. Looks like we found her." This direct connection to Blackwood transformed the case from rogue officers to department-directed conspiracy. With the alliance in place and evidence secured, Vanessa prepared for the most dangerous phase, going public, with enough force to prevent the system from silencing them as it had so many before. The courthouse janitor, who had moved invisibly through their halls of power for years, had assembled an army they never saw coming. Now she would execute a plan with the precision and timing she had once brought to internal affairs investigations, but this time with the unstoppable force of a mother fighting for justice. At exactly 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, Vanessa Johnson's plan launched with simultaneous precision across multiple fronts, like a chess master revealing a long-planned checkmate. In the federal building downtown, Benjamin Marshall hand-delivered comprehensive evidence packages to the FBI field office, requesting immediate investigation under civil rights statutes. At the same moment, Courier Services delivered identical materials to the State Attorney General Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and State Police Standards Commission. Digital copies hit the secure servers of 7 different oversight agencies simultaneously, each with specialized components highlighting violations under their particular jurisdiction. The Westridge Examiner's website published Sophia Chen's explosive exposé, Corruption, Profit, and Violence Inside Westridge County's School-to-Prison Pipeline. The meticulously sourced article included portions of audio recordings, financial documentation, and testimony from multiple victims of the same system. Within hours, national news outlets picked up the story, amplifying what might otherwise have been contained locally. On social media, a coordinated campaign by the Alliance released key video evidence directly to the public, fragments of school surveillance footage showing the unprovoked assault on Zaria Officer Patel's, recorded evidence of departmental conversations about covering up the incident, and most damning, the audio from Zaria's cloud-stored phone recording capturing the officer's explicit statements about making an example on Chief Blackwood's orders. The hashtag Westridge Corruption trended nationally within hours. Officer Maya Patel chose this moment to come forward publicly, holding a press conference where she testified about witnessing evidence tampering firsthand. "I became an officer to protect people," she stated, voice unwavering despite obvious fear. "What I witnessed in the Vanessa Johnson case was not protection. It was abuse of power at every level." Her testimony detailed how evidence had been altered, witnesses intimidated, and reports falsified under direct orders from department leadership. As public attention focused on the department, multiple officers facing potential charges began seeking immunity deals. Officer Jenkins, who had processed the initial evidence in Zaria's case, provided written testimony about being instructed to clean up the documentation. "The body camera footage wasn't corrupted," he admitted. "It was deliberately deleted on Chief Blackwood's direct order." The tactical timing of these revelations left no opportunity for the department's usual containment strategies. With federal agents already securing records and conducting interviews, local officials couldn't control the narrative or the evidence. Judge Sullivan was caught attempting to shred documents in his chambers when federal agents arrived with a warrant. His computer showed searches for overseas bank accounts and non-extradition countries in the hours before his arrest. In a hospital parking lot, Vanessa confronted Officer Tanner directly. Wearing a wire, and with Marshall's associate filming from a distance for her protection, she approached the man who had put her daughter in a coma. "Officer Tanner, she said calmly, "I think it's time we talked about what really happened to Zaria." Tanner's arrogance had dissolved as news of the investigation spread. His face showed the strain of a man watching his protection crumble. "I was just following procedures," he stammered, sweat beading despite the cool weather. "Johnson was resisting. She went for my weapon." Vanessa's voice remained steady. "We both know that's not true. Your body camera showed the truth before it was deleted. Zaria's phone recorded everything. Multiple witnesses have come forward." His composure cracked further. "You don't understand the pressure we're under. These kids need to learn respect. Blackwood said to make examples when necessary. It wasn't personal." "Wasn't personal." Vanessa stepped closer. "You put my 16-year-old daughter in a coma for exercising her constitutional rights. You called her racial slurs while beating her. You falsified reports and planted evidence. How is that not personal?" Tanner's facade finally collapsed entirely. "Blackwood has been running this operation for years. We were just doing what we were told: maintain order in certain neighborhoods, make examples of troublemakers, especially the ones organizing others. The school contracts are worth millions to his brother's company. Every kid in the system is profit." His inadvertent confession, captured clearly on recording, provided the direct link between policy and action that prosecutors needed. At police headquarters, federal agents with warrants were met with an unprecedented scene: officers turning on each other, rushing to secure cooperation agreements. The blue wall of silence crumbled as self-preservation instincts took over. Chief Blackwood and D.A. Pierce were caught on a recorded call discussing eliminating witnesses. a conversation captured through the listening devices Vanessa had placed months earlier. "We need to make sure Patel doesn't reach that hearing," Blackwood had said. "Accidents can be arranged. We've done it before." The reference to past accidents opened investigations into multiple suspicious deaths, including Raymond Johnson's. Through her methodical planning, Vanessa had ensured that no single point of failure could derail the case. Evidence existed in multiple locations. Witnesses were protected by multiple agencies, and the public exposure was too widespread to contain. As federal agents escorted Chief Blackwood from the department in handcuffs, the expression of stunned disbelief on his face revealed the truth he had never imagined. The night janitor he had passed in hallways for years without really seeing was capable of bringing down his entire operation. That evening, as Vanessa sat beside Zaria's hospital bed sharing news of the day's events, her daughter managed her first genuine smile since the assault. "You did it, Mom," she whispered, her speech still affected but improving daily. "They never saw you coming." Vanessa squeezed her daughter's hand gently. "We did it together. Your courage started this. I just finished it." The system that had spent decades perfecting ways to silence victims had never prepared for Vanessa Johnson, a mother with nothing left to lose, the investigative skills of the detective they had tried to destroy and the invisible access of the janitor they had forced her to become. Their greatest mistake had been believing they had broken her when they had only transformed her into precisely the weapon needed to dismantle their corrupt empire. 6 months later, the ceremonial courtroom of the Westridge County Courthouse was filled to capacity. Vanessa Johnson sat in the front row, her daughter Zaria beside her. At 16, Zaria still showed signs of her ordeal: the slight tremor in her right hand, the occasional pause when words wouldn't come. But her eyes held the same determination that had led her to organize the school protest nearly a year earlier. Behind them sat rows of families who had found justice delayed, but not ultimately denied the Gonzalez family, the Davis brothers, Kiana Williams, and her extended family. People whose suffering had been silenced for years now witnessed the formal implementation of the consent decree placing the Westridge County Police Department under federal oversight for a minimum of 5 years. Judge Eleanor Washington, brought in from the federal circuit to oversee the proceedings, addressed the crowded room. "Today marks not an ending but a beginning. The path to transforming institutions is long but necessary for justice to prevail. The consent decree mandated comprehensive reforms: independent review of all use of force incidents, body cameras with automatic cloud backup beyond local control, civilian oversight with real investigative power, and anti-bias training with measurable outcomes. Most significantly, it dismantled the financial incentives that had corrupted the system, prohibiting any connection between arrest statistics and departmental funding or private contracts. In the months following Vanessa's coordinated revelation of evidence, the case had expanded beyond even her expectations. 12 officers, including Tanner Collins and Chief Blackwood, faced multiple charges ranging from civil rights violations to conspiracy evidence tampering and, in Blackwood's case, embezzlement of federal funds. Former District Attorney Howard Pierce had already pleaded guilty to obstruction and civil rights violations in exchange for testimony against his co-conspirators. His detailed account of the parallel justice system they had operated confirmed Vanessa's evidence that certain defendants, primarily young people of color, were processed through specific channels designed to maximize incarceration rates regardless of actual guilt or appropriate sentencing. Judge Gregory Sullivan had been disbarred and indicted after investigators discovered offshore accounts containing over $2 million in payments linked to Blackwood Enterprises. His role had been pivotal, ensuring cases went to favorable prosecutors, warrants were approved without scrutiny, and settlements remained sealed. The Westridge Juvenile Detention Center had been shut down pending complete investigation, with its residents transferred to state-run facilities or released to supervised programs. Senator Thomas Blackwood faced separate charges related to contract fraud and kickback schemes, his political career in ruins. Perhaps most satisfying to Vanessa was the comprehensive review of previous cases handled by the corrupt network. Over 200 convictions had been vacated or were under review with compensation proceedings underway for those wrongfully incarcerated. The Lincoln Heights Academy School Board had been disbanded after investigations revealed systematic targeting of minority students through discriminatory policies. The new administration, led by educators with backgrounds in restorative justice, had implemented dramatic reforms that reduced suspensions by 70% while improving academic outcomes. Officer Maya Patel, whose courage had helped break the case open, had been appointed to lead the department's new Professional Integrity Division with real authority to investigate misconduct. When Vanessa was offered reinstatement to her former position with full honors and back pay, she surprised many by declining. "I can better serve justice from the outside," she explained, accepting instead the chairperson role on the newly formed Community Oversight Committee, a position with subpoena power and direct access to department records. Using her substantial settlement from the civil rights lawsuit, Vanessa established the Raymond Johnson Foundation, providing support for victims of police violence and scholarships for students pursuing careers in civil rights law or criminal justice reform. Today's hearing included victim impact statements. When Zaria's turn came, she rose slowly, using a cane for support as she made her way to the podium. Her voice, once weakened by her injuries, had regained its strength through months of therapy. "What happened to me wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding," she began. "It was the intended outcome of a system designed to criminalize black youth to punish us for knowing our rights and standing up for justice." She described the assault in unflinching detail, the pain, the fear, the months of recovery that still continued. "But this case isn't just about me. It's about every young person targeted by this corrupt system, every family silenced through intimidation, every community taught to fear those sworn to protect them." Her concluding words resonated throughout the courtroom. True justice isn't just punishment for wrongdoing. It's transformation of the systems that allowed that wrongdoing to flourish. Today is just the beginning of that transformation. As the formal proceedings concluded, families gathered outside on the courthouse steps, people who had once been isolated in their suffering, now united in pursuit of lasting change. The community that had been fractured by institutional racism was healing through collective action. One unexpected revelation had brought particular closure for Vanessa. The investigation into Raymond's death had confirmed what she had long suspected. His brake lines had been deliberately cut on orders from Chief Blackwood after Raymond discovered evidence connecting the department to the assault of a juvenile detainee. His posthumous exoneration and recognition as an officer who had died upholding his oath brought a measure of peace after 8 years of uncertainty. At the memorial service held to honor Raymond and other victims of the department's corruption, Vanessa and Zaria stood together as symbols of persistence against seemingly insurmountable odds. The following week, as Zaria walked across the stage at her high school graduation, slowly but without assistance, the audience erupted in standing ovation. Her academic achievements, despite months of hospitalization, had earned her special recognition, but it was her courage in standing against injustice that inspired her community. At the reception afterward, she shared her plans with Benjamin Marshall, who had become a mentor during the legal proceedings. "I'm going to follow in your footsteps," she told him. "Pre-law at Howard University, then civil rights law. This fight isn't over." Marshall smiled. "With advocates like you leading the next generation, I have hope for real change." As mother and daughter later visited the newly established memorial for victims of systemic injustice in Westridge County, Vanessa reflected on their journey. The system had taken her husband, her career, and nearly her daughter, but had ultimately failed to silence them. The courthouse, where she had once cleaned toilets unnoticed, now stood as the site of historic reforms she had engineered. The invisible janitor had brought down an empire of corruption using the very invisibility they had forced upon her. Zaria squeezed her mother's hand. "Dad would be proud of what you did." Vanessa smiled. "Of what we did. Your courage started everything." As they walked away together, Vanessa Johnson, once decorated officer, then forgotten janitor, now justice architect, understood the most powerful lesson of their ordeal. True strength often comes disguised as vulnerability, and those rendered invisible by power sometimes gain the perfect vantage point from which to dismantle it. What do you think about Vanessa's journey from janitor to justice seeker? Has this story changed how you might view the invisible workers in your daily life? If this account of a mother's relentless fight against corruption moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and resilience. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that even the most entrenched systems can be changed when people refuse to be silenced. Thank you for witnessing this journey with us. Remember that in the fight for justice, persistence is power. This powerful story reminds us that justice, while often delayed, doesn't have to be denied. Vanessa Johnson's journey shows how systems of oppression can be dismantled by those they seek to silence. The most profound lesson lies in how she turned her perceived weakness, being rendered invisible, as a janitor into her greatest strength. When powerful institutions attempt to marginalize people, they often overlook how this positioning provides a unique vantage point from which to observe their corruption. The story also demonstrates that meaningful change rarely comes from confronting corrupt systems head-on. Instead, it requires strategic patience, meticulous documentation, and building alliances across divides. Vanessa's methodical approach, gathering evidence, securing it in multiple locations, and striking simultaneously through various channels, ensured no single point of failure could derail justice. Perhaps most importantly, this narrative reminds us that institutional racism often persists because it's profitable. The school-to-prison pipeline wasn't just about bias, it was a business model enriching those in power. By following the money, Vanessa exposed the true motivations behind systemic oppression. Finally, we learn that true transformation comes not just from punishing wrongdoers, but from reforming the systems that enabled their actions in the first place. Have you ever witnessed injustice and felt powerless to stop it? What would you do if you were in Vanessa's position? Would you have her courage and persistence? Drop a comment below sharing a time when you stood up against unfairness even when it seemed impossible to win. If this story of a mother's relentless fight against corruption touched you, please hit that like button to help others find this important message. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of resilience and justice that often go untold. By sharing this video, you help spread awareness about how systemic racism operates and how it can be defeated through documentation, determination, and strategic action. Thank you for bearing witness to this journey with us. Remember, in the face of injustice, your greatest power may be persistence, especially when the world tries to render you invisible.